Well, hi everybody, nice to see you. My name's Pete Gladwell. I'm the Group Social Impact and Investment Director at Legal & General. I'm hopefully joined by Professor Jane Robinson. Hi Jane, can you hear us?
Hi Pete, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Super. Yes, we can, loud and clear, thank you. So Jane is the Pro-Vice Chancellor at Newcastle University. She would have loved to be with us in person, but as I'm sure she'll explain, she's had a graduation ceremony today, so sadly unable to make it down here. As I understand it, and I hope I've got the brief correct, we are here to talk about place-based impact investing. So if anyone else thinks they're here for another session, now's the time to usher out. But thank you for inviting us, as I say. I just want to say a few words about how Legal & General approaches this topic, and then I'll hand over to Jane, because I think it's most important that we hear from the people who benefit from this investment and local communities. So just to explain how L&G views this, I don't know if any of you remember that old-fashioned term CSR. Yeah, and the one we kind of binned a few years back because it was investment banks wreaking merry havoc around the economy and then giving some money to the local primary school. But actually, for me, something of CSR is really important because we really view place-based impact investing as part of our corporate social role, our CSR, our role in society. There's clearly an important part of the City of London and the many financial institutions who inhabit the City of London, which is taking care of the nation's wealth, taking care of its pensions and its savings. But maybe a part of CSR, our corporate social role, that we've lost sight of slightly is how we improve the lives of the people who have entrusted their pensions and their savings to us as the City of London. If you look at the City of Newcastle, and Jane will talk about that in more detail very shortly, over 100,000 people in Newcastle have entrusted their pensions and savings to Legal & General alone. Never mind the Avivas and the M&Gs, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a responsibility to that 100,000 plus people, not just to provide them with financial security in retirement, but also be answerable to them about how we're improving their place. This is in some ways a bit different from classic impact investing, because for us, this isn't a marginalized activity. It's not like we have one fund on the side that does a bit of good stuff. This is something that we embed into every fund, and the investment we're here to talk about, Newcastle Helix, actually has 4 different funds from L&G, 4 mainstream funds invested into this project. We put some quite clever, if you don't mind my saying, financial structuring behind that. The aim of that is to use each pool of capital to maximize its social impact. Put very simply, that means that we're trying to use as little short-term, high-return capital as we can, and as much low-return, long-term capital as we can, to maximize both the viability of the project, the social outcomes and social impact that come from that project, and also, really importantly, minimize the cost to the taxpayer. So we're thinking quite carefully across Legal & General about which pools of capital are the right ones to invest into the place, rather than simply having one marginalized impact fund on the side that does this kind of thing. It's embedded into the ethos of each fund that we have. So that hopefully, as I say, generates better outcomes. But rather than take my word for that, I'd like to hand over to Jane to talk about the impact that this investment and this partnership, this really critical partnership element, has had in the City of Newcastle. Can I hand over to you, Jane?
Thanks very much, Pete, and thank you for the invitation to join you today. And as Pete says, it's a busy time of year for universities with graduation ceremonies, so apologies I've not been able to get down to London today, but hopefully I can share the example of Newcastle Helix as a real exemplar, I think, of place-based investment. For those of you who don't know Newcastle, Newcastle Helix is a 24-acre site. It was previously, many moons ago, a coal mine, and then it was the site of Newcastle breweries, famous for Nuki Brown. So it has a really important connection with place and local communities. And Helix is really a flagship development, and it has become that international exemplar of sustainable urban innovation. which is now home to hundreds of businesses, many thousands of students and researchers, and soon new homes being built on that site as well. So it's a really vibrant part of Newcastle city centre, and I think quite unique in the UK in that regard. The economic impact for the city has been absolutely huge. It's a £350 million site, 4,000 jobs and counting, 500,000 square feet of office and research space, and has been a real hub in terms of key growth sectors around life sciences and energy. We have national innovation centres for ageing and data. And I think what we're seeing now is a growing cluster which attracts significant inward investment to Newcastle and the North East region. And just last week, DIT published figures that showed the North East had topped the list for regions in the UK, creating jobs through inward investment. But I think it also is about building confidence in Newcastle and the wider region, and connecting to local communities. So Helix is very much in the heart of Newcastle, adjacent to, in the West End, to communities, high residential area. It's also right next door to the Newcastle United Foundation. And it's been really important to us working with our partners, L&G and the City Council, that we've worked with local communities, with local schools, having a whole program of engagement events that brings life to the site, raising aspirations, highlighting career opportunities, and developing skills pathways. So it really is a site that is connected to and relevant to those local communities. And the name Helix is really important. It comes from the quadruple helix of bringing together the public sector, the university, the private sector, and local communities. And it is that intersection where we believe the whole becomes much greater than the sum of its parts in terms of impact. And I think Pete's talked a bit about the partnership with LNG and the approach, which has very much been a long-term approach. I think clearly this site, Helix, couldn't have happened without that partnership. The investment from LNG has unlocked and accelerated development significantly. We're part of a joint venture, which is an equal partnership between the Unity, Newcastle City Council, and L&G. And I think it is about that long-term commitment that we have, but also about the relationships and the trust that has been built over time to manage what are sometimes quite difficult and challenging questions, but we've worked through that, I think. And that is also about a shared set of values. I know in some of your earlier sessions, you've been talking about that approach in terms of ethical investment, sustainability, and so on. And I think we share those values. So, in terms of what next, the site has been, I think, incredibly successful. We now have the majority of the buildings are complete on site. We have everything from a teaching and learning centre, which has thousands of students going to it, to an urban sciences building, to a building called the Biosphere, which is purpose built for life science businesses. And what we're seeing in the Biosphere, as an example, is this is a building that was actually funded and developed by the City Council, but working with the university and L&G, we've now got a large number of spin outs and businesses that over the last 18 months have secured over £50 million of investment. So these are significant companies. It's also home to an innovation that was developed between the university, the city, and the NHS during the pandemic. And what we've seen there is that following the pandemic, that is a centre which is now focusing on the next generation of diagnostics. And we are stressed from global companies in that development. And we're now looking to develop Biosphere 2, 3 and potentially 4 as well. We're also really excited about the development of new homes on the site. We'll have over 240 units on the site, mixed tenure, all about innovation, testing new models for sustainable urban living. New hotels also coming on stream in the coming months, and of course bars and restaurants. So it's a really important focal point for the city, but we're also seeing the impact beyond the boundaries of Helix. So we're seeing move on space for those companies. We're seeing other companies that perhaps can't find space on Helix because some of our key buildings are now completely full, looking at other spaces in the city. So I think that sense that it has been a catalyst, not just for those 24 acres, but for the city more broadly, is right to say. And finally, just to say a little bit in terms of our next big project is to focus on a new 29 acre brownfield site, which is about 15 minutes up the road from Helix on the site of the former General Hospital. Currently known as the Campus for Ageing and Vitality, we're developing a £500 million scheme to create a new neighbourhood, which is really going to be about helping to enable people to live longer, healthier and happier lives. This is really about taking what we're learning from the innovation on the Helix site and looking to see how we can work with our partners to demonstrate and scale those products and services that we've learnt about on Helix. It's at the heart of Newcastle's West End. It will be transformative for those communities, but it will also help to put Newcastle on the global map as a place for industry to test and develop new products and services for the longevity economy, which we all know is worth trillions of dollars going into the future. So I think really just to summarise, for us, we're incredibly proud of this development. We think it is a fantastic partnership. L&G have just been so supportive and have just made a real difference to Newcastle and to the communities there. And we're very excited about where we might go next. So I hope that's been useful. If you want to find out more, I'm sure we can send some further information, but I'll hand back to Pete now.
Jane, thank you so much. I hope you can hear the applause, Jane. So just to finish, what's the call to action? I think for us, the plea would be to be clear on your theory of change. How is your organisation, particularly your financial organisation, making a difference in society? And as I say, for us, it's really been about working collaboratively with critical partners like Newcastle Council and Newcastle University to identify where there's a need for investment locally. And then recognising our role in society is not just to steward people's pensions and savings, but also to have a positive impact in their places. So when we've identified that need, finding the right structures and bringing together the whole organisation to meet that need, rather than marginalising this, making it something that's mainstream in future. Thank you so much. I'll hand over to a video next. Thank you.
The work that Global Parametrics does primarily focuses on climate resilience. We believe very strongly that there are no natural disasters, only natural hazards that can cause disasters due to social, economic or financial reasons and policy as well. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to really champion the use of anticipatory financial solutions to enable communities to be able to both anticipate and be resilient to climate events.
Our investment comes from the UK government via FCDO, so the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. and the German government's development bank, KfW, via the Insta Resilience Investment Fund.
Atlas is a renewable energy generator looking to accelerate the transition to 100% clean energy. We've been conducting community initiatives across all our projects from the outset. Our approach is to engage with the community early and understand what needs are there, what gaps exist, and then look to invest in programs or projects that address them and look to improve the standards of the community. The organization's investment is 100% funded by Actis.
Here at Streaford Renewable Energy Plant, we are a renewable generator. We combust about 250,000 tonnes of straw every year. We run 24/7 for 50 weeks of the year, generating about 39 megawatts of power to power about 60 to 70,000 homes.
Sleaford Biomass Plant is an attractive investment to Railpen not only because of its low carbon power generation technology, but also because of its local economy influence. So providing local jobs, supporting the local economy through community benefit schemes, and buying feedstock from local farmers.
Our view is that for a business to be truly impactful, it must be sustainable. And the only way for a business to be sustainable is it has to generate profits.
In terms of balancing impact with profit, it's really important to move away from the more sort of traditional binary view that these are mutually exclusive. You know, it's become ever more prevalent in the culture for investors to think not just about returns on capital, but to also think about the impact, the social good that your investment can have.
Our goal here is to try to push the envelope for a more just transition. So we're passionate about that endeavor. At the same time, we have to acknowledge that if we go out of business, our ability to influence goes to zero. And so that's the balance we constantly need to strike.
Practically, to maintain this balance, it's good to have sort of reporting and monitoring systems and a key impact objective that you're working towards.
So the low carbon transition is the first time in many decades when governments, policymakers, regulators and investors are all aligned together to fight climate change. Investors should make use of the significant available resources and technologies, frameworks, methodologies and data to build their climate risk and engagement capabilities. This will help make their portfolios more climate resilient, allow them to capitalise on low carbon investment opportunities and enable a just transition.
The investment choices you make are dramatically important because they shift major capital flows into desired directions.
But it's important to note that these investments cannot just have a basic social impact or metric that they can reach. They can really drive forward systemic change and try and sort of resolve or try and mitigate these key issues that are currently being faced by our society today, such as climate change.
We want to really be a force for good in the world. That's how we describe it, that's how we see ourselves. We just came up with our sustainability report, and when I read through that, it almost like makes me get very emotional because if more business leaders would do this, what a different world we live in.